An entitled worker refuses me access to their gym, claiming that I was sick after I stepped outside just to cool down. But in reality, I had been working out at the gym for an hour before he showed up, and all of my stuff was in the locker. But despite my protests, he would not allow me to get my stuff and instead demanded that I leave. Here's what happened. Since the New Year's swarm is still all up in my gym at the moment, I've been getting up very early and going in at around 4:30 in the morning. I can deal with needing toothpicks to keep my eyes open if it means I don't need to queue up for a bench. Something that's relevant to the story, my gym is part of a chain, and a separate location wound up getting into some serious trouble because a bunch of people going there all caught the plague. Corporate came down with a decree for all locations. Scan the membership, check the temperature on your forehead before being allowed entry. So I show up at 4:30 in the morning, stow my stuff away, and do the first half of my workout. I'm doing some cardio along with some strength training. I don't know if this is the case with everybody, but after 45 minutes of kicking my own butt, I'm feeling a little bit warmer than I usually am, while also typically craving some sweet nicotine. Vaping indoors is frowned upon, and it's bloody cold outside, what with it being January in New England. So this is a two birds with one stone kind of situation. I grab my vape and my phone, and I walk around outside for a little bit without a coat. I wind up chilling out real quick and decide I don't need much more nicotine. So I scurry inside, and there's a new face behind the desk, a younger looking dude I've never seen before in my life. I show him the vape, and I explain that I was just getting some air, and he says I still need to scan your card and check your temperature. Well, no point in crabbing at the kid over corporate policy, so I let him scan my card, and then he uses the thermometer and says that I am not allowed to enter the gym because apparently I'm running a fever. I look at him and I say, dude, you really think I just worked up a sweat somehow in the freezing cold and didn't show up with a gym bag, never mind a jacket in this weather? But he looks at me and he says, I don't make the policy, sir. I just enforce it. I'm gonna need you to leave. So I look at him and I say, okay, sure. Can I grab my stuff from my locker? I guess I'll just shower at home. And before I could continue explaining where my stuff was, this guy chimes in and says, sir, you need to vacate the premises immediately. You are at risk of infecting other people. I look at him and I say, there's a difference between overheated and feverish. I didn't have a fever when I came in an hour ago, so I did a bunch of stuff that made me sweat. Pretty sure that'll increase my body temperature. How about you call your manager over or have someone grab my stuff from the locker? But this guy simply wasn't getting it, as he looked at me and said, sir, you need to leave the building immediately. You are risking infecting other people. So I responded, yeah, you can repeat yourself as many times as you'd like, but I'm not going home without my stuff. Now, would you like to call a manager over, or should I call the police and have them explain this to you? It was at this point that he put a finger to his earpiece and summoned building security. Right around the time the woman who let me in the first time came out of the bathroom with a look on her face that said, what is actually going on? She gives me a dazzling customer service smile, looks at me and says, what seems to be the problem? We start talking at the same time, with this guy claiming that I'm infected and need to leave, while I'm also saying that I just want to get my stuff and leave. She cuts us both off and points at me. She says, you go first. I look at her and I say, the guy scanned my card and says I can't get my stuff because my temperature is too high. She gives me a curious look. She said, your temperature was fine when you came in earlier today. What happened? Oh, that's right. You stepped out, didn't you? Thankfully, she recognized who I was in the gym. So I responded by saying, yes, that's me. I guess I just didn't cool down long enough. She waved me through and said that I'm all set just as the large security dude was coming down the stairs to presumably eject me from the building. I didn't hear what went on between the dude who tried to give me the boot and her, but I do know the security guy took over the desk so they could have a discussion in private. After I took a swim and a shower, I thanked her for letting me back in, and she apologized on the guy's behalf. Apparently, she had to run to the bathroom real quick and grabbed a locker room attendant to cover the front desk for her. He was the only male attendant in so early, and she couldn't leave the desk, and he didn't think there was anyone else who would open the lockers without knowing the code. So he felt entitled to just make me leave without my stuff because he didn't know what else to do and knew the manager wasn't available. But thankfully, she was there to save the day because I honestly don't know what I would have done if I had to leave without my property. That front desk attendant was completely out of line. I mean, talk about not knowing what you're doing or just not knowing in general how to approach anybody in public. Like, this guy clearly was working out and he was clearly coming back in from the outside. I mean, his stuff was in the locker and this guy was acting like he was breaking the law, calling security as if this guy is some kind of disturbance. So hopefully this employee got put in their place because that is some awful customer service and there's no reason for him to act like that in the slightest. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. A group of entitled customers don't pay their full bill and leave before I get the chance to collect their check, taking with them both copies of the receipt and completely stiffing me out of a $120 bill. Here's what happened. So I work at a semi-high-end restaurant restaurant, where the average bill for 2 people is about $80 to $100 pre-tip depending on what they order. Tonight, these 3 girls got sat in my section. They were young, like very early 20s, which can sometimes be a red flag at our restaurant, as we get a lot of teenagers and very young people who will order water and the cheapest menu items and then tip like $2. Or they order a bunch of stuff and then are shocked at the total price and then don't have any money for a tip. I'm not judging or anything, and definitely not saying that all young customers are like this, as I am young myself, but it does happen fairly often. Regardless, I gave them great service, as I always try my best to do so. I even made a cute little ice cream dessert with whipped cream and candles for one of the girls because they said it was her birthday. They ended up ordering a decent amount, 2 appetizers and 3 of our cheaper entrees, and at the end of it, their bill was about $120. They asked for 1 check, so I brought it out to them. One of the girls handed me some cash as well as a credit card. She said to me, "Here's $80 for part of the bill, and then please put the rest on the card." So I go up and I start counting the cash, and I realize that it's $65, not $80. I counted a couple more times to check, and yep, it really is $65. I returned to the table to let them know. They gave me a weird look. Then one of them says, "Oh, we must have counted it wrong. Well, I guess it's $65 then." So I apply the $65 to their bill, swipe the card for the rest, then bring them their receipt and tell them thank you and good night. They left about 10 minutes later. I didn't actually see them get up and leave because I was taking care of another table. Well, as you can probably guess, it turns out that when they left, they not only took the merchant copy of the receipt, they also took the check presenter book with them. At first, I thought maybe another server or a busser had accidentally grabbed it, but I asked everyone and we searched everywhere, including the trash cans, but to no avail, we couldn't find it. The only explanation was that they took the merchant copy and check presenter. They didn't leave any cash on the table either, so I was completely stiffed on a $120 bill. If they didn't have enough money to tip, I would understand. I just don't understand why they felt the need to take the entire check presenter. Part of me is worried that they thought I stole the $15 difference from the supposed $80 in cash and somehow lied about it only being $65, and that's why they didn't tip me. And now I really just hope they don't think that of me, because I would never do something like that, and I honestly just want to do a good job. This is the first time this has ever happened to me, where they've taken the merchant copy with them to avoid leaving a tip. However, something like this happened to one of my coworkers on a $300 check a couple of weeks ago, and he was incredibly upset. But either way, this is such a weird situation, and I wish I was able to catch them before they walked out the door. That really is weird in my opinion. Like, if you're gonna go out to a restaurant and you're gonna eat all this food and have all this service sent your way, the least you can do is not only be ready to pay for what you order, but also be ready to give a tip. Some of these restaurant workers literally don't make that much money at all, so they really rely on tips just to try and make ends meet in their life, and it really does make a difference. And I bet they were probably hoping that you didn't count out the cash and realize that they were giving you $65 instead of $80. That's like the only reason I can think of that they would take everything with them and basically avoid paying you anything. So hopefully those people never come back to your restaurant ever again, because what they did is so dishonest, and it's simply irresponsible and so disrespectful to order so much food and then get out of there before paying your bill. I broke up with my boyfriend yesterday after he crossed my boundaries and continued to talk to his ex-girlfriend. But now I feel like I made a massive mistake, and I feel horrible for breaking up with him, and now I don't know what to do. So a few years ago, I met my boyfriend on Tinder by the name of John. That's not his real name. It was my first time dating someone from Tinder or even meeting someone online. We immediately hit it off and quickly discovered that we had a lot of interests in common. We both had come out of a very long relationship with our other ex and both had a lot of baggage as a result of it. On my end, I was engaged to someone and we ended things due to my ex cheating on me multiple times, as well as lying about it. For him, they broke it off because he realized that they weren't compatible and he was essentially settling for someone that he had no chemistry with. He had admitted that he cheated on his ex during this time and regrets it immensely. We are both pet owners and have niche careers that involve on his end some last minute travel. I'm lucky that I live with my parents and they're able to watch my cats for me. I used to have a puppy with my ex, but when we broke up, he took the dog and I never saw him again. John, on the other hand, lives alone with his dog and the rest of his family lives about 16 hours away from me in Canada. It's hard for John to get help watching his dog if he has to travel. At the beginning of our relationship, he discussed with me the arrangement that we had with his ex-girlfriend. When he got his corgi, his ex-girlfriend by the name of Brittany was extremely involved in raising and taking care of the dog. And after they broke up, they agreed that she could babysit the dog a few times a month. And when John travels, since Brittany misses the dog and was essentially the dog's second owner for 3 years, he would allow her to come and see that dog. He also felt that it was cruel to deny Brittany the ability to see a dog that she had raised since it was just a puppy. When discussing this, I told him that I understand the need for the arrangement since I was not yet comfortable uncomfortable with caring for his dog that early on, but I also made it clear that if we continue to progress forward, that arrangement will need to come to an end at a certain point. As our relationship progressed, I wanted to show that I could be someone he could rely on, so I started asking if I could watch his dog when he went on his weekend exercises for work, or if I could babysit the dog for the day while he worked long shifts, and things were going really well, but he was still letting the ex babysit the dog too. At this point, Brittany would call him and ask if she could have the corgi dropped off, and he would drop everything just to do that. I felt that this was starting to cross boundaries on his end and that Brittany was taking advantage of him. I also suspected that she still had feelings for John. With my history of being cheated on multiple times in a lot of horrible ways, I began to feel threatened and jealous. I didn't like the person I was when the conversation of her popped up. When I began to feel uncomfortable about the arrangement, I told him that time is starting to come where I can't move forward more with her still involved. When discussing, we made a plan that he would phase her out over the course of 3 months and tell her that he's been seeing someone. He also started pushing back a bit when this came up. He kept saying he thought that this was cruel and would tell me how devastated he would be if the situation were opposite. My counter argument every time was that for one, it's a dog. The dog will get over it and will be fine. It's not a child. And while it is nice that you're choosing to do this for her, unfortunately, by allowing her access to the dog, you're keeping a door open for her. Also, Brittany is a grown woman and has a big girl job where she can adopt her own dog. Eventually, she will also get over this situation. But most of all, it makes me uncomfortable. If this arrangement is that important to him, I understand, but I'm walking out. I don't want to be constantly fighting for attention or trying to figure out who gets to babysit the dog with an ex of 6 years. Finally, in September, he told me that he cut her off. We continued to progress and fall even more for each other. Life was amazing, and we even began talking about moving in with each other. On Friday night, I went to his apartment after work to pick up his dog while he's away for the weekend. I borrowed his laptop to look at something on my Gmail and ended up finding a picture he took of him and his ex hiking together the day before on Google Photos. I was heartbroken. I was convinced I was cheated on and that this was the beginning spiral of it. When I confronted him, he told me that he just couldn't bring himself to do it when the time came to cut her off. He felt that he had hurt Brittany so badly in the past that he was scared to hurt her again. It turns out he had been lying to me for months, and she had been secretly watching the dog this entire time. He explained that it started off with a white lie until it spun out of control, and he didn't know how to get out of the situation without hurting or upsetting either of us. It also turns out she didn't even know that I existed, which I found out when I called her. I broke up with him on the spot. I told him my boundaries. I explained multiple times over multiple months why I was uncomfortable with this. I also stated multiple times that I cannot be in a relationship with this dynamic and would break up if we don't take this step. He still chose to not cut her off. I feel betrayed and like I can't trust him anymore. When breaking up, he kept saying that he didn't realize I was this serious and he thought that we would work through it when it finally came out, or he would have gotten the guts to cut her off by then. His apologies are sincere, and it is evident that he is distraught over the realization of how badly this has affected our relationship. It's now been a few days and I feel horrible. I've lost my best friend and all I can think about is calling him to apologize and get back together. I miss him so much. I'm worried I overreacted and maybe this is too harsh, but I also stated my boundary and he disrespected it over multiple months while lying to me in the process. A big part of the reason I chose to break up with him is because I cannot see a way to move forward. I don't know how to rebuild the trust in our relationship. Every other aspect of our relationship is phenomenal, and I truly thought he was the person I'd be with forever. I'm so sad. I feel that I made a mistake and should have worked through this instead of just cutting him off. So I'm now at a loss and I truly don't know what to do. I can kind of understand where the original poster is coming from, but it really does seem like he was straight up cheating on you. Like, why would he take some kind of selfie picture with this lady if he's already in a relationship with you and he had already supposedly cut this lady off? It's also mighty convenient that he lives about 16 hours away, so it really does seem like he was trying to live some kind of double life, keeping Brittany around to take care of his dog while also having you to be the loving girlfriend who was clearly just a side girlfriend for him to pick up whenever he felt like it. That is so disrespectful to you, and just like you said, this violated all of your boundaries, so I completely understand why you broke up with him. I wouldn't feel bad about this. His true colors came through, and you saw him for the liar that he really is. And to top it all off, this Brittany lady, she didn't even know that you existed. There's a good chance that she thought she was gonna probably get back together with John. I mean, it's pretty suspicious now that you have the full story as to why she would go on a hike with their dog with just the two of them, because I'm betting if she knew that you were around, she probably would not have been a part of this in the slightest. If anything, you've uncovered that John is unfaithful and that he clearly can't be trusted, so I think you got off the hook in a major way. Just imagine if you got married to this guy and this Brittany lady was still around. John was incredibly dishonest with you, he was not forthcoming and truthful, and you found out the hard way, and it really sucks. But in my opinion, if I was in your shoes, I would take this as a clear red flag that you honestly do not want to be with this guy. He can't be trusted, he's going to lie to you, and he clearly was using you as some kind of side chick. And no matter how you feel, I truly think you deserve a lot better than that. My dad makes my life hard ever since I started talking to my mom again, who kicked me out several years ago. And everything is such a big mess at this point, I honestly don't know what to do. So for a bit of context, both of my parents were not very good parents to me. I'm an 18-year-old female, and my mom was a mom who would really be very controlling, especially when it came to what I ate and what I chose to wear, as well as how I did my hair growing up. She would yell a lot and was overall just incredibly stressful to be around. She kicked me out when I was nearing the age of 15, saying that she had had enough. Meanwhile, she also did this to my two other siblings. I went to stay at my dad's, and my dad and I saw each other once a week before this, but we weren't really close. He doesn't speak to me, and I don't speak to him. It's that type of thing. I spoke to my stepmom a lot, but then I saw that she had sent a text message to her friend saying how annoying I was. So that relationship soured almost immediately. My stepmom isn't from my country, so when COVID laws lifted, she went back to her country for 2 weeks at a time, coming back for 1 week. I'm nearing the end of 16 at this point, and in those 2 weeks that she was away, my dad told me it was my job to keep the house tidy, especially as he worked. I told him that I go to college every day. I get up earlier than him, and I get home a lot later than he does. I don't want to be cleaning the whole house by myself. But with no surprise, he didn't really listen to me. Keep in mind, by the way, that my dad did nothing for me. For my 17th birthday, he went with my stepmom to his favorite restaurant, a steakhouse, even though I'm a vegetarian. What I'm trying to get across is that he just doesn't really think about me, and I just accepted that I didn't really have a relationship with him, and we were really more like roommates. Each morning, I'd be given a list of things to do, from mopping to cleaning his bedroom, to changing his bed sheets and cleaning the kitchen, stuff like that. I found this incredibly stressful, because if I didn't have it all done in 2 hours, he would start shouting at me. Now, I don't take well to being shouted at, and I tend to close off pretty quickly if someone does that. Days out with my friends ended up being us cleaning the house together, because if it wasn't clean when he came home, he would start yelling again. I tried to bring this stress up to my grandparents and my stepmom, but they did nothing in the house, and they left it all to me, including cooking my own food. He gave me no spending money at all, and if I took any, he would count it beforehand. We did not have a father-daughter relationship before this, and I didn't take to him parenting me. He was honestly just a stranger, and I felt like I was a live-in maid, quite literally at that. This went on for about a year, until I literally couldn't take the stress of missing my mom. Also, my college work was becoming too much, and keeping the house tidy all by myself was just starting to weigh on me. I dropped out of college because I was falling so far behind. I decided to get a job in this time because I didn't want to be doing nothing for 4 to 5 months at a time, so I started working about 30 hours a week. The following year came along, and I needed about $400 to enroll into college. I'm not close with my dad, as I said, so I asked my stepmom if she might be able to ask him about it, and this was in July, and she never got back to me. For some more context, in May, I started to speak with my mother again. We had not spoken at all in 2 years. My dad disliked the fact that I was speaking to her again. In August, I wouldn't go to her house, but then we ended up having a big heart-to-heart in the car, where we got it all out, and I ended up sleeping at her house. So I slept at her house for a few nights in a row, maybe a week. I sent a text message of where I was, but then I decided they knew where I was, and there wasn't much point in texting every night. I see now that this annoyed them. At the time, it was innocent, but when September came around and college started back up, my dad decided at this point he would not be paying for my bus pass. I'd been sleeping at my mom's house, so now I just lived at hers. I didn't feel right asking my mom, a few months into meeting her again, for $400. My dad said he'd only pay for half of it, as he considered himself to be split custody now. My stepmom said that she'd never stick for that, and that she would give the money back if she were me. So I did, and I ended up paying for the bus pass from my money I saved up from work. I feel I can't really forgive my dad for this. I called him nasty names, the worst of them being that I called him a part-time dad. Eventually, I stopped speaking to him when we had a huge argument over all of this, and I basically screamed the house down, saying how bad of a dad he really was. I left him a letter with my feelings, which he replied back saying that it was a total joke. This whole situation is messy, and I honestly don't know what to do. I really think, based on what you've described, your parents are objectively terrible parents. There's no other way to put it. They seriously have not taken care of you growing up, and they've left you to basically jump back and forth between the two of them, trying to find some kind of footing so that you can grow up and move on with your life, which honestly is exactly what you need to do. And I don't say that to be condescending. It just seems like your parents are not going to support you, and I think you need to understand that moving forward. There will always be some kind of excuse that will prevent them from giving you some kind of aid, whether calling you a total joke or just refusing to pay for anything from you. But even if they do, you can bet that there's always going to be some passive passive-aggressive response, as they only pay for half of something they easily could pay for in full. So let this be the motivation you need to work towards living on your own and finding your own place to live in. You will probably see so much of a difference in your life when you are the one who's paying for the stuff in your life, because it really sounds like your parents failed you, but at least with some hard work, you can pick up where they clearly dropped the ball. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, use the playlist at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out in the description below and subscribe.